again. It's been some time, at least a couple of years, since I've talked about any dumb things I've been doing. I did just do a thing. It wasn't really dumb. It's been long enough that I got some new glasses. I just got back from 2 days on the Cross New Hampshire Adventure Trail, the xnhat. I don't know if anybody actually says that. It was really fun. It is a trail, or a route, I should say, that goes from Bethel, Maine, if you're going east to west, Bethel, Maine, all the way to Woodsville, New Hampshire, which is the border of New Hampshire and Vermont. I do want to preface anything that I say about this route with please, please, please visit xnhat.org. The Cross New Hampshire Adventure Trail organization is amazing. They have an amazing website. I've been working on websites almost all my career. I can tell you it's just, in terms of information that they put on there, it's one of the best things I've seen. And they are incredibly nice, super helpful. They will send you a paper map if you email them. If you manage to ride this whole thing, they'll send you a patch. They send you like cards and stickers. I think that's what the patch looks like. Other stickers. Like, how cool is that? You know, like they take the time. Paper map, like I said, very durable. It can't be cheap for them to print, thousands of those. Anything that I say, please go to that website and just sort of do your own research. I'm doing this off the top of my head. I did plan my trip for a while, but I didn't, I wasn't religious about all the details. They are. They're really, really good about disseminating information. One thing I wanted to mention in terms of logistics, parking. There are definitely some established parking areas all along the route. Please go to the website and read exactly what they have to say. Not every parking lot is overnight. So in terms of the route, it is probably 50-50 paved road and rail trail or some sort of trail. It's primarily rail trail, and there are some paved sections, but they're pretty brief. There are a lot of ways that you can do this route. You could do it as an out and back, maybe with a stop at the end, which is what I did. I stayed one night and then I rode back. You could do it as a bike packing trip. There are places to camp. You do need to have a plan there. I'll touch on that in just a little bit. It's also possible to use this as a starting point to get into bigger loops into the White Mountains or, into Vermont, where there are several established bikepacking routes. You could do those. You could do this just as day trips, do it in pieces, 10 miles at a time, ride out and back, come out, then come back another day. Lots of people do that. There's also a really well-known, and I hope I'm getting this right, but it's called the COAS. I think that's right. It looks like it's spelled Coos, but it's COAS. Mountain biking trails in Moose Brook State Park. Please look that up. I think I got that right. But I hear really good things about that. You could do something like a bike pack into there, camp there, ride mountain bikes, and stay there for a day or two, and then come out. Lots of different ways to do it. In terms of why I did it, I thought it sounded cool. I did do an initial recon from Bethel to Randolph-ish and back. I'm glad I did. The section from Bethel to Gorham starts off paved, little rolly, and then you get into a section of fire road called Hogan Road. And that goes up to an old closed down dam project called Power Island. And that's the roughest section of the entire thing. I'm glad I did it. So I knew, because I knew I'd be going, well, I'd eventually be going up and back down it. And it's not crazy, but it is chunkier in there. Further on the route, you're talking almost exclusively rail trail or pavement. So like crushed gravel and double track, and some of it's very remote, but it's like it's an old rail bed, so it's an established route. Back on the Maine side, heading into New Hampshire, it's pretty backcountry. Again, it's not crazy. You're not gonna have like a terrible time, but just know that going up and down that thing, the rocks are chunkier. If you're gonna flat somewhere, it's probably gonna be in there or way at the other end, at the Ammonoosuc Rail Trail. But I'll get into that in a little bit. When I made the decision to do this, I had a pretty narrow window of time. I did it Friday to Saturday, primarily because you cannot find a place to stay that you would pay for that isn't a full weekend. So I found a place for just Friday night that would have me, so I did it on a Friday and Saturday, and I'm really glad I did. I wanted to see if maybe I could do it kind of fast, but I wanted to ride it first. Also wanted to see what it would be like to use that route as a means to link up to other routes. I could tell you a lot about the route, but you can get a lot of information just by looking at it. One thing I will say is, please don't be scared of the elevation profile. If you know the area of the White Mountains where this goes, it sort of parallels Route 2 for a good portion of it. It goes kind of over the shoulder of Jefferson. Now, if you've ever ridden a bike up and over Jefferson, up Jefferson Notch Road, which is one of the steepest unpaved routes in New England, roads, it gets up to like 22% or whatever. This doesn't go up that way. It gets nowhere close to that. You actually go right past the entrance to that road, but you don't go up it. It's nothing like that. Please keep in mind, these are old rail beds, right? With the exception of the cog on Mount Washington, we don't send trains up mountains in New England. We never did. They go along pretty flat areas. Now, if you look at that elevation profile, it's over the course of many miles. So I don't want to say you won't feel it at all, but it is extremely gradual. You'll feel it as you come up. It'll feel like you're pedaling and not really going that hard or not going that fast, because you're not. But then you'll come over and you'll zing right down the backside, and it's as good as it's gonna get, really. But I say all this to say, just like, don't be afraid of that hump on the elevation profile. It's really less than it looks like. There is a ton of history on this route. I did not stop at every sign to read everything, but there's a whole lot going on, and the website that I mentioned earlier, the Cross New Hampshire website, has incredible information. They have a storybook where you can go through and look at every single bridge that was ever built along this thing. There's a ton of railroad history in New England. You're riding right on it. It's really pretty cool. One of the facts that I like to recall every once in a while is that, a number of our hiking trails, I would say the vast majority, were due to logging and logging railroads. And a lot of the trails that we have used to be at least railroad access into wherever the trail was cut. Sometimes the trail was cut by a logging railroad. There's an excellent book on this, which I'll put a link to in the description. But it's pretty cool stuff. Everybody wants to know about gear and pack lists and all that sort of stuff. I'm a list maker. As I said, you could do this a lot of different ways. I did it as a through ride, so 85 miles. Bike-wise, I rode a gravel bike. Any bike will do, but there are degrees of happiness, right? I think a gravel bike is probably the best way to go. A mountain bike would work if I had the choice between a hardtail and a full suspension bike. I would run a hardtail. If you had a full suspension with lockout, front and rear, that could work. It would be overkill and probably heavier than you would want, but it certainly could work. You could ride a road bike. I would recommend at least 30C tires. You do not need tread. If you're familiar with bike brands like a Maxxis Rambler or something like that, you do not need that. That's too much. And you're actually on quite a bit of hard pack or paved road. And having a tread is just, you don't need it. You don't really want it. I ran file treads. You can look this up. I ran a Maxxis Receptor. And I think they're 40C. I rode at about 40 PSI. And that's higher than I normally would run, but I was also running like 5 bags on my bike. Those are the choices that I made. You did not need cush cores or airliners or like anything like that. It's not like that. And like I said, the roughest portion is Hogan Road. And other than that, you're going to be okay as long as you kind of watch where you're going. I took a DeLorme InReach satellite GPS device. If you know anything about the whites, you know that cell service isn't really a thing in a lot of the whites. I at no point felt in danger. That said, I did have good weather, and even though it was August, it still got down to like the 50s when I was going over the Mount Jefferson shoulder area, and that was at like 11. So it can get a little chilly, but other than that, I didn't have any difficulties. However, if I had any kind of issue, I felt good having that sat device along. So if you have one of those, I would bring it, especially if you're doing the whole thing. The great thing about the route is that it does parallel main roads and when I say main, I don't mean without the E, but pretty major thoroughfares. And you could get to them from the trail, but it's not always expedient to do so. You might have to walk some way before you get to a road crossing where you could come back around, in the event that you needed help or you had a mechanical that you couldn't fix on your own. But that's why I had that thing. And also, just because I was alone and I wanted my family to feel comfortable with me doing this. So it's a good thing to have. Cell phone, there are a couple times where I tried to send a text just to say I was okay, and it took like 2 hours to send because it was just looking for cell service. So I wouldn't bother. Just tell whoever is waiting for you that you'll get to them when you get into town. I went pretty light with clothing. Again, I had a really good weather forecast that I trusted. The one thing that I decided not to bring was any kind of like light puffy or sweater or some sort of jacket that had insulation. If you ended up in a situation where you couldn't get out of there for some reason, you could get pretty cold overnight. And depending on the season or whatever, again, I did this in August, so I didn't have too many concerns there. So that's a choice that I made. I did it primarily just because of space reasons on the bike, and I just didn't want to stuff one more thing into a seat bag. I did bring arm and leg warmers, which I did end up using on day 2 because it was quite chilly when I started, and a light jacket, and that was enough. Your mileage may vary. Definitely pay attention to the forecast. I ran blinky lights on my bike. We are in an era where, unfortunately, blinkies are almost necessary to ride your bike anywhere because of distracted driving. I was a holdout for a long time. I didn't want to run one. but I'm an adherent now. I think they're obnoxious but effective. On this trail, there are sections that are shared with ATVs. There's shorter sections than the whole. The whole thing isn't like that. There's a whole bunch of it where there's no mechanized vehicle use, but there are sections. And everybody I encountered was courteous. They kept their speed down, they waved, all that was good. They can't help but kick up dust. And it's a good idea to be seen. So having a light is a really good idea, in my opinion. The last sort of gear thing that I'll mention is I hadn't really done any bike packing before. I had a frame bag, and about a week before I left, I was kind of fitting everything, and I realized that I could not get I normally carry a 26-ounce bottle for longer rides, a couple of them, and I ride a pretty small frame, a 51 centimeter, so the triangle is pretty small, and these bottles would not fit. And I was running just a kind of conventional bottle cage, and I ended up replacing those bottle cages with side release bottle cages. If you run a frame bag and you have not set up your bike with side release, you should really consider it. Mine showed up just in time, and they solved that problem. There is a little bit of a break-in period with them where you have to get used to putting your bottle in kind of sideways and kind of twisting it in and all that sort of stuff, and there's a little give to them. So get all that set up before you go, and kind of get used to it. I found that because I wasn't super used to it, I drank a little less than I normally would on the way out, and that did affect me a little bit. So it's worth experimenting with and kind of getting used to that setup. And if you don't understand what I mean, top tube bag is sort of in the triangle, and the bottles come right up under it. So getting those bottles in and out, up and down with a conventional bottle cage really doesn't work very well. But being able to pull it out kind of to the side does. In terms of logistics, water is the number one thing that you need to know about. There are long sections without water. What I would ask you to do, so I don't make this 900 minutes long, go to the website, look at all the information that they have about stops. They talk specifically about this. I ran two 22-ounce bottles, and I ran a 2-liter water bladder in my frame bag with 2 bottles worth of water in it, which is 1,300 milliliters ish. Which gives you a little more room to kind of cram the thing in there. And my strategy was just like, kind of don't stop until I have to stop. You could filter water on this route. You're paralleling streams and rivers, much of it, but it's not always super straightforward to get down into those areas. So that's what I did. Now, please understand, you go through towns and you can stop. You can stop at gas stations. There are places to stop and restock. There's a campground along the way at Israel River. There are lots of places, but they're not always like super convenient. Like when you run out of water, you run out of water and you need water. So kind of have a plan there. In terms of a plan, just so I didn't have to think a whole lot, I wrote down all of the water stops, all of this resupply, and any bike shops. And I have to say, I left my good friends at Allspeed off of the bike shop list, and I apologize. They just put a shop in Bethel. So that was very helpful. So I kind of had a running list of like what towns were coming up in what order, at what mile, and what I might be able to get there. I didn't end up stopping a lot. If you do this route, please do stop places. It's part of the reason why they've done this, is to get traffic through these areas. And you'll find that people are really, really happy to see bikes. I ran a Garmin Edge 530, and I did use GPS navigation. Those GPX files are on the website, and you can download those. They're great. They do change over time because this route they've tweaked it over time. They've ended up opening up different parts. New parts of rail trails have opened up. So it is worth getting the latest one. There are areas with no cell service and spotty satellite coverage. So occasionally my GPS did kind of freak out and kind of send me the wrong way and stuff. There are not a lot of places to get completely off of the thing unless you try really hard, unless you get really excited and just keep going, which I did a couple times. You know, all I can tell you is, like, if you've done any GPS bike riding, you know that it can be a little variable here and there, and you have to kind of talk to your device and say, do you really do it? Should I really U-turn here? In terms of camping, I mentioned this earlier. There are some established campsites. There's an established campground. Please don't camp illegally. Please don't do that. There are, like many of our public trails systems all over our country, there are places that go through private areas where they've granted access. Some of the rail trail goes literally through people's backyards. Like the house is maybe 20 feet away, okay? So be courteous, don't plop down just anywhere. If that happens enough, it could threaten access to certain sections of this amazing route, and nobody wants that. So just please keep that in mind if you're planning on camping. Do your research, figure out legal places, work out something with a landowner if you can, that's fine. But don't be irresponsible. Don't just plop down in somebody's back 40. It's not cool. One little thing that I did, which is I don't consider cheating, I sent myself a little care package to the place I was staying, just with some food and toiletries and stuff, so I didn't have to ride that all the way there because I knew I was coming back. I actually sent myself too much food, so I might calibrate that a little differently if I did this again. But that is also an option. It's just, you know, sending supplies down the line if you want to do something longer. I went into writing this with like certain goals and ideas for the future. And what I realized when I got fairly deep into it on day one was, like, it's a rail trail and we should all just chill out. And that's what I did. And when I got to the end of it, I was pretty tired. And I will say, riding east to west, the end of the trail, going into Woodsville, as you get onto the Ammonoosuc Rail Trail, is rough. It's a number of sections are shared with ATVs. It's chunkier. It gets a little washboard. There's more dust. I was getting tired. I was losing patience a little bit. And when I got settled and had dinner and stuff, I kind of wondered, like, why did I do this? And then the next morning, I had a nice coffee at a cafe in town and started, and it's amazing how different your perspective is. Even though you're going back the same way that you'd come, it's amazing how differently you see things. And I did, and it was, even though I just ridden the thing, going back the other way, I saw things that I had completely missed the first time, and it was almost like a completely new route to me. It was really, really fun. If I were to identify a favorite section, much of the Presidential Rail Trail, which is kind of right in the middle of it, is gorgeous. lot of the areas along the river further west, getting into like Lisbon, Bath, that area, gorgeous. Getting into Woodsville is really pretty. Much of it is really pretty, but that section from Gorham going back to Bethel along Hogan Road is the coolest for me. Partly it's because I live in Maine, but it's along the Androscoggin River, and it's just really cool. It's backcountry, and yeah, it's fun. Be self-sufficient. If you're going to do this, particularly if you're going to go all the way through, make sure you know how to fix a bike if something goes wrong. Make sure you know how to fix a flat, how to fix a broken chain if you were to have something like that happen. Have a toolkit, have some tubes. I ran tubeless, but I still brought 2 tubes and some sealant, and you don't need to bring the whole toolbox, but you are very, very far from anything resembling a bike shop. So you got to be able to handle it yourself. Be courteous. I was really amazed at how nice everybody was, regardless of mode of transport. I ran into a group of women riding horses, and we chatted, and I got a little pet from a pony, and it was really nice. And then about 10 minutes later, I ran through the pony poop right at the end of the Presidential Rail Trail. But it was kind of cool because I knew where it came from. Another thing that I thought was really cool out there was that a lot of people were riding e-bikes. And, quite frankly and quite bluntly, people who I don't think would have been out there otherwise. And I think that's really cool. It's a really nice use of the vehicle to get people out there. There are people who are fishing and using e-bikes, taking an e-bike 10 miles into their secret little fishing spot. That's really cool. And the last thing I'll leave you with is, just something that occurred to me. After I finished and I was writing back, I was listening to this podcast with Andy Slavitt called In the Bubble, and he had Patton Oswalt on, and they were talking about sort of reemerging. Patton is starting to post-COVID, starting to perform a little bit again, and all of us have gone through isolation in the last couple of years, and it's done crazy things to us. My family in particular is affected by some immune-compromised situations. So we've had to be quite careful. And, I'm just now kind of coming out of my shell a little bit. But Patton and Andy were talking about, just the fact that going back out there, you realize kind of all of a sudden that life on the outside is not social media. People are not talking about stuff nonstop in their little bubbles. They're having to deal with one another, and by and large, we deal with one another. I guarantee you that I interacted with people over those 2 days on that trail who I had differences of opinion with, but it didn't matter. We were just exchanging information or saying hi or just pedaling our bikes, and that was fine. And it was just kind of a good reminder that social media is just one slice of life that is amplified there, and the rest of us on the outside, we just have a lot of stuff going on, and we can get through stuff. All right, that's everything I got. If you have any questions or any comments, please leave them. I'll try to get back to you. Please go try to do this trail sometime. It's really pretty cool.